of our Family Trilogy series, WHBQ-TV focused on the kids in America, growing up too fast, some say, in this age of high tech and high unemployment. Tonight, we continue our report on the changing family, concentrating on the middle years as we present part 2, Happily Ever After.
I'm riding a big round ball. I never do dream I may fall. You are so beautiful.
When the modern couple is married, they preserve the event on videotape. However, for couples like Shari and Michael Buford, the thought behind capturing the moment is as old as the first wedding tintype, something to show the grandchildren. And it doesn't really matter that the videotape may not be that steady, the marriage will be.
Everything I hope for is everything that I need.
I have always viewed marriage as something romantic and something that you stick with that person through thick and thin. And when you take vows, to God. And they're serious vows. They're nothing to be played with. And I intend to live by them.
Everything I hope for is everything that I need.
Good evening. I'm Claudia Barr. As optimistic as Shari and Michael may be, statistics show those marrying today have a 50-50 chance of making their marriage last. By the end of the 70s, 1 out of every 2 marriages ended in divorce. Divorce in Shelby County was up 59% from 1970 to 1980, almost 83% statewide. The figures have some government leaders and social scientists alarmed. They see divorce as the greatest danger facing America today, saying if the family is headed for disruption, society as we know it cannot resist a similar fate. In a moment, we'll explore the issues in a 1-hour documentary, followed by a live discussion with specialists and concerned family members. We'll be right back with part 2 of our family trilogy, Happily Ever After.
When the human body is injured or malfunctions, everybody knows just what to do. They see their doctor or go straight to an emergency service. But when a person loses his emotional equilibrium, or when an addiction takes control of a life, there's less certainty. At Lakeside Hospital, the treatment of emotional problems is our specialty, using proven medical practices and a deep concern for the quality of human life. Unlike a physical disorder, an emotional disorder affects the essence of a human being, so we treat the whole person. At Lakeside, your emotional well-being is our most important goal. Lakeside is a full-service psychiatric hospital that operates as a therapeutic community. That means our doctors and nurses and other professionals work closely with patients to establish each individual treatment plan. We want to feel and look like a community, where our attitude is one of watchful caring and nurturing rehabilitation. At Lakeside, our programs are structured to eliminate unnecessary stresses and pressures. We provide a comfortable but challenging environment where your daily successes are real. Rest assured, behind that calm exterior is all the medical knowledge and technology that you would expect from a full-service psychiatric hospital. Lakeside has concentrated programs for adults, for adolescents, and for children, as well as the treatment of addictive diseases. Each is a separate program with separate medical staffs and facilities. Our doctors, nurses, therapists, and counselors are well-trained and fully qualified. Many of them are recognized authorities in their fields. Lakeside's aim is to ensure the return of the patient to the family and the community and help restore a happy, comfortable, and productive way of life. Lakeside Hospital. Perhaps we can help.
I take anything for some work. My kids are in school, so I need some work. We got to live, got to eat, got to survive.
I don't know a soul who's not been battered. I don't have a friend who feels at ease. I don't know a dream that's not been shattered or driven to its knees.
I was laid off from Buckeye Cellulose because of a lack of work. It's the first time they've laid off any laboratory personnel since the late 1930s. There were about 30 of us in all. I understand about 25 of them were lab technicians and some of them were actually chemical engineers. All of us thought we had a very stable situation out there. I've worked every day since I've been out of high school, 13 years.
I can't help it, I wonder what's gone wrong.
I guess I'm one of the, 11, 12 million? I guess now there's 12 million and one.
These new poor are just shocked. I mean, they're stunned. They've done all the right things. I mean, this guy tells you in America, buy a house, coach baseball, go to church, you know, keep the family unit together. These people have done all the right things. Some of them get real hostile when they see that. They think I'm, you know, a fan of what's going on, and they want to tear it down because they've done all the right things.
A father who has been laid off and has a wife and children to support. According to our Aid to Families with Dependent Children, the state policy, an able-bodied father cannot draw this aid. We've heard about fathers who leave home in order for their families to be supported by welfare.
Gwen Mitchell and Pat Rush see the frustration taking its toll on family relations. Alcoholism, wife abuse, and child abuse are increasing.
I had a woman in my office 2 days ago. Both she and her husband have college degrees. She just had a baby, had it in the car. She said to me, I don't even know him. You could see the love and feel the love on her face. She said, I don't even know him. I've met him once. I had to go out to the car to meet him. I had to get him to sign something. He couldn't even handle coming in here. He couldn't be a part of the process that admits I got to ask for help to feed my family.
While the economy has had the most recent impact on the divorce rate, the trend was established long before our current economic crisis. When Ronald Reagan was given the Republican nomination, he proclaimed his administration would be a crusade to revitalize American institutions, the first one being the family. At the root of the promise was a remembrance of things past, before shifts in sexual mores, social attitudes, religious beliefs, and laws affecting marriage and divorce.
You've gone from me, oh, tragedy.
The last time American families saw a stable divorce rate was in the 1950s, with only about 2 divorces per 1,000 people.
Everybody says, you know, that I live in the past and you got to look to the future. Fine, you know, I look to the future. But after all, if all of my good memories, you know, were 50s and the best memories I had were back then, why then that's naturally that's what I relate to.
High school Eddie is not alone in his longing for what he remembers as the simpler times. Whenever he DJs a 50s sock op, he's sure to have plenty of company sharing his temporary escape from the complexities of the present.
We also had feelings of God and country. You know, Be True to Your School was a song. There was one by 3 very popular artists, which included Dion, which spoke love of God, love of country, turn away from impure thoughts. And that's something you wouldn't even talk about.
I had my dad's 51 Hudson and we'd go cruising and we'd hit Gus's Drive-In or we'd hit Leonard's Drive-In. and we'd hit Kay's Drive-In, and we'd hit Gillies, and we'd hit Earl's Drive-In, and then we'd cruise Main Street. But we always ended up at Riverside Park, out at the pavilion or watching the submarine races over McKellar Lake there.
The music that you're listening to right now is really easygoing and quiet, and you can, you know, it's make-out music, really.
Come on, baby, while the thrill is on. Come on, baby, let's have some fun.
But the youth of the 50s would shape the attitudes of the 80s. Their changing values revealed in their new seminal make-out music, whose sexual power bubbled just beneath the surface, until Elvis.
Come on, baby, let's rock some more.
We'll just take a walk down Lonely Street to Heartbreak Hotel.
And I think he manifests the pinnacle of what was going on in the white community for rock and roll. And I think that music caused some changes. Yeah.
What do you think there?
I think so too. I think Elvis left a mark on all of our lives forever. He was able to take a new brand of music that we were not used to listening to in the white community and putting a name on it. It made you have the heebie-jeebies. It made you feel good.
Said she's old enough to be his mama, but it don't matter. No, no.
It might be argued that Memphians Carol and Larry Raspberry, having made rock and roll their career, were more directly affected than other kids of the rock and roll generation. But Elvis's role as a liberator has been cited as an explanation for the extraordinary grief accompanying his death. Elvis was more than a singer. He was the catalyst for a new culture.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear.
Came the 60s and the social order turned over. It was a time of civil rights.
Delighted I am to be in Memphis tonight and to see you here in such large and enthusiastic numbers.
And moral wrongs.
There's battle lines being drawn.
Disillusioned with their country, youth envisioned a freer society. A counterculture was born.
Carry on, love is coming, love is coming to us all.
Students and actually non-students, student types were rioting. They burned down the Bank of America and things like that. And that didn't quite seem like my cup of tea either.
So, Peter Farber, a college grad, seeking fulfillment he could not find as a computer programmer, and turned off by the violence occurring around him in Santa Barbara, dropped out. Like many others in the late 60s, he found what he was looking for in a commune. He and about 250 others settled on the farm in Summertown, Tennessee.
Kind of trying to spread the message of the feeling that people can basically get along, and that I feel like through cooperation and not competition, we'll really get the problems of our planet figured out.
The farm is one of 2,000 communes surviving from the 60s, and with the number of children growing up here, it would appear the farm will be around a while.
It's a small town. It's a protected small town here. You know, we didn't have to worry about razor blades in our kids' candy. You know, it's safe here. They can grow up here relatively sane and safe, you know, and not feeling burdened or worried the way some kids are having to grow up these days because of the way things are.
And there are others arriving daily, like Donald Stewart from New Jersey, a divorced father of 2 young girls.
They cushioned me. They gave me a foundation to go ahead and work it out with my kids and grow with them. And I didn't find that support out there. I really didn't find that support.
Some 1,500 now call the farm home, living proof the hippie did not die with the 60s. This particular commune has spread its concern to other countries through its international relief program, Plenty.
I have not mellowed over the years, and I have not changed or surrendered. I still believe in the ideals of the flower children. I still am a flower child.
Chuck Yellen, who no longer looks like a flower child, especially in his nuclear family setting, is living proof the ideals of the counterculture still exist off the commune.
I have experienced that in its fullest extent. So I know that it's possible. That if we shared and were gentle and kind and truthful, in reality, not just holding those ideals and then going about your daily grind, if we did that, that things could change, that we could change the world. We didn't want to drop out as much as we wanted to change the world.
While they may not have changed the world politically, they did have an effect on its culture. By 1969, youth's liberated lifestyle was in full bloom and full view at Woodstock, their ideals and values outstripping those of the previous generations. Youth was setting the trend. Today's swinging singles lifestyle began in the 60s, epitomized by the first singles bar said to have originated in Washington, D.C. In Memphis, the lifestyle continues at such places as Confetti.
I think it's more of a one-night stand.
Single bars are very necessary in today's lifestyle. It's the only place you can really get out and meet somebody new, and interesting people are here, believe that or not. They are. I've been going out to these type places now for about a year, and without this, I would have literally no type of social life.
I think they're fun. I think they're attractive. I think they're the best looking places you can go to. But get your But I wouldn't put my future into a singles bar.
Enjoy being around people of their own kind. Partying instinct.
Many of those who frequent singles bars are divorced. The new ideas about sexuality and self, conceived in the 60s, resulted in a major alteration of the institution of marriage, shattering the index set for the divorce rate back in the 50s, with the rate more than doubling between 1966 and 1976, remaining at record levels into the 80s.
I go to meet nice people in church. I come to a singles bar to have a good time.
If you don't like or can't afford to go bar hopping, then it's hard to meet people and to get out and do things like that. And this way we try to provide a nursery too, so if you have the children, it's provided for, and so that helps, and people can get out and meet people and do things.
It has become so common in recent years that churches must now pay attention to the divorced people in their congregations. Social groups such as this one at the Catholic Church of the Resurrection are encouraged.
It was hard to get up the nerve to go to something because you go by yourself or with your child or whatever, and this has brought a lot of people together that have one thing in common: they no longer have a spouse.
On this particular night, the group came together to discuss coping with the holidays.
What's wrong with the holidays? What?
Total bummer. I mean, you've got no Christmas morning if you don't have your kids that designated weekend, if that is a weekend you don't have them. No meals cooked together. Had it maybe been before. Just total all the way down. Of course, setting up trees, picking up trees. Now, that's me, the main thing. First of all, picking up the tree. You don't have anybody with you anymore doing it.
When I grew up, the parents would always turn the stereo on with a Christmas song, and then go get the kids. We'd be behind the doors. We know, we already woke up and, ready to run out.
Right.
And now I got one little child, a little girl. But now I can't do that this year. It'll be the first year I can't turn the stereo on, have her come running out.
The statistics are so high I can't count. I don't remember them, but there are a lot of people that are in this situation, and there is a need for it. And we've got started, and it's just going real good.
In about 1974, 75, my sister was living here, and one day she just said, "Let's go to a NOW meeting," and I said, "Okay."
Not long after, Marcia Wells ended her 6-year marriage. Her experience points up what many believe to be the greatest social change of our time, the evolving roles of men and women. Marcia says the feminist organization NOW altered the consciousness of both her and her sister.
And one of the things they mentioned that we were both interested in was consciousness raising, which they explained as a small discussion group of women who talked about issues that were important to women. Talked about a different one each week, and they mentioned some of them as employment, marriage and family, that sort of thing.
The feminist ethic is one of connectedness, interrelationship, and takes as its primary, I think, its primary foundation that there's potentiality that must be developed for all, and that all extends not only to women, but it extends to all races, to all nationalities, that there is an inherent respect that has to be maintained for the potentiality that's there.
Dr. Fran Quaglio says Marcia's experience is one which society as a whole needs to share, a collective consciousness raising which Dr. Quaglio says would transform the existing patriarchal society for the better.
Briefly, it says that the male represents full humanity in all of their capabilities and in all of their activities, and the woman represents not full humanity, but a derivative humanity. Derivative in terms of their relation to men, derivative in terms of their capacities, and therefore their participation and their self-determination is always truncated.
I think every woman has to make her own life in this world. If I choose to have myself inferior to my husband, and by inferior I mean intellectually or any other way, maybe that's my choice to do that. I think a woman can do anything she wants to do.
Eva McDade of the Conservative Eagle Forum is one of many who feel the women's movement represents a threat to the American family.
Well, of course, every home is going to be different. I don't know what goes on in every household. I do know that the divorce rate is very great in this country, and there must be a reason for that.
It definitely had the effect of helping me identify the problem that was in my marriage that I hadn't seen up to that point, because I always thought that marriage was what I had, was two people being together all the time, wanting to be together all the time, and I didn't really know that there was something basically wrong, and there was not two individuals who were together, there was this one couple that had separate identities.
Quote, "She doesn't behave as she used to."
Dr. Alan Battles says he's seeing more and more divorces which catch the husband off guard.
That is something that started about 8 or 10 years ago. It's usually a female who is 28, 29 or so, just approaching 30 or just having passed 30, who has a child perhaps, and who has been a housewife, and who informs her husband one night, I'm going to leave you. I have no other person in whom I'm interested. I'm simply not happy here. I feel so utterly hollow inside.
I remember asking my husband if he would please talk to me more, and talk to me without the little boy, little girl games that we used to play, because we talked in this kind of baby language. And if he would look at me when he talked. And he got pretty upset at that. He felt very challenged, very threatened by the fact that I wanted to change this relationship that we had and that we had been comfortable with for so long.
And so when this role that the female is supposed to have occupied, as long as this particular male has been alive, is suddenly changed and should be perhaps even 180 degrees reversed, well, he hardly knows what to do. And where does that leave him?
I was young when I married him, just a week before my 20th birthday. And so at this time I was like 25 and was really beginning to, not only because of the women's movement, but just because I was getting older and starting to realize that there had to be more to life than just waiting for him to find what he wanted to do and then having my turn. I wanted my turn sooner.
The problem is our structures oppress and truncate and strangle that capacity, primarily for women, but also for all men, for all children. So it's not destroying the family. Feminism is trying to open up the fullest possible potential for every human being.
I think the breakup of our marriage was good for him.
eventually in the long run, because we were so insulated as this couple that he was very vague about what he wanted out of life and the direction he wanted his life to go, his career. He was a creative person and experimented with different outlets for that creativity, and nothing that really satisfied him. And it really wasn't until our marriage started to break up, and did break up, that he came around to fulfilling the creative urges that he had, finding a way to vent them, and is doing much better now, is a much more fulfilled person. It's basically still today a male-dominated job, and especially in a lot of these southern states, it's really, I've been well, 3 years ago, I was told that a lot of places around here do not hire women. Just, no woman facilities and stuff like that. So I don't, unless there had been some sort of movement, I don't think I would be working as a welder.
Lois Bennett does not consider herself a feminist, though she feels the movement has done a lot to eliminate stereotypes in the job market, thereby allowing her to be employed in a better-paying, non-traditional job. However, in Lois's case, as no doubt in many others, it led to divorce.
And it's kind of hard going home and not saying anything about what she did today, And I had to totally forget work at home, because if I said anything, he'd want to know who I was working with, and it was a total jealousy act. He just couldn't trust me working with all men, and the money part of it is he didn't have a skill or a trade to where he could just get into a job and advance like me. And I was normally making anywhere from $1 to $3 more than him an hour, and it caused ego problems on his part, I think, and that created arguments.
I believe in a man's responsibility to care for his family, and a mother's, to go out and bring the bread home, and the mama's responsibility to cook it.
But after 18 years of bringing home the bread, the economy has forced 38-year-old Cassell Gilmore to adapt his concepts to fit the times. When he, like hundreds of others, was laid off at International Harvester, his wife Geraldine, a nurse, had to assume financial responsibility for the family of 6. Sometimes Cassell and Geraldine argue over his approach to housekeeping.
I'm not so male chauvinist that I wouldn't clean up. I do clean up. I wash dishes sometime and do the other things, run the vacuum cleaner. But I don't do it as much as I should. But then we got big kids too, so I think they ought to take up some of the slack.
Most working women face that problem, that you're expected to do things at home and on the job. I think that's just a thing that most working women face, that you're expected to cook. Of course, now he will cook. That's one thing he'll do.
The decade of the 80s will see Cassell cast in another role in the computer industry. For while the recession cost Cassell and many of his unskilled but well-paid co-workers their jobs, he realizes the technological age is here. Robots would have eventually gotten him, even if he had escaped the recession. So after a lapse of 20 years, Cassell is resuming the role of student.
And that is the major adjustment, whereas my attention span is about 20 seconds. And when you sit down and you open a book and you stay there for about 30 minutes, well, I'm not used to sitting still for much longer than 30 minutes. Now that is the hard adjustment.
But it's hard starting over at you're not old, but in your 30s.
Yeah, I know.
It is, I think that's one of the bad things, because when you get past 35 and then the job market, they're, usually looking for younger people, and I think that's one of the bad things, not just with us, but with most of the men that were laid off.
But Cassell will have it easier than others when he starts looking for that job. And though Geraldine went to work 4 years ago over his objections, he's reservedly glad she did.
When she went to work, we didn't need her to work. She was something she wanted to do. It turned out good, but I believe in a man's responsibility to care for his family.
Hello, Ms. Von Radeski. This is Betty Brooks. I'm with the National Bank of Commerce in Memphis.
When Betty Brooks entered the job market in 1963, it wasn't to find self-fulfillment, but escape from an abusive, alcoholic husband for herself and her 3 children. Having had only housework experience, Betty says it took a while to land her first job and begin her career.
I pounded the streets and I ended up calling a friend of mine and asking him before Christmas of '69 if he would hire me during the Christmas season. I worked into a permanent position, and then I ended up at the bank in early '70, and that has just been a blessing.
I'm not against a woman having a career because I have one myself. I'm a teacher. But if I had small children in my home, I would make sure I was there when those children were there.
Lois Bennett says she would work even if it weren't a necessity. Like a lot of today's women, she feels being a mother is important, but so is being an individual.
Sometimes I feel like I've missed out a lot, you know, because I've worked since he was 6 months old. I don't remember the first step he ever took, you know, and I'm not too sure I was there the first time he said, "Mama," you know. I feel like I've missed a whole lot by being a working parent, but then again, I've accomplished a whole lot too. You know, I basically brought him up on my own and supported him on my own, and I think I'm doing pretty good for a single parent.
Some businesses, like UT, have established daycare centers on premise for their employees, which makes it easier for working mothers.
So I can come down here during the day. These rooms are set up with one-way observation booths, so I can come in and observe him during the day, watch his interaction, watch the staff working with him, and leave without disturbing or upsetting him, but I can still enjoy watching him play.
But such centers are rare, and at an average cost of $50 a week, quality daycare is out of the reach of many working mothers. Some see federally sponsored daycare as the answer, but that has been met with resistance from conservative groups, and not only for cost reasons.
The federal government can put into those positions anybody they want to. That person may not be very well educated, for one thing, and yet they're going to take that small child, and for 8 hours a day, or more than that in a lot of cases, when the mothers have to leave the children there, they are going to mold this child's thinking.
That is significant. The protection of the traditional patriarchal image is what they want. It's not to protect children. It's not to, as they say constantly, lift the moral heights of our nation again. It's to keep the patriarchal definitions intact.
Dr. Quaglio says resistance to women in the workplace continues for the sake of maintaining a tried and true system that works at the expense of women. She says when we see a woman working at such jobs as Lois Bennett's, we still debate her capability, forgetting it was routine for women to do such jobs during World War II. And Dr. Quaglio says today's insistence on maintaining the traditional family structure is reminiscent of the 50s following the war.
Remember, because I grew up in that period, the 50s image of the housewife with the putting the pie in the oven and the husband coming home from the outside world, the public world, you see. The woman is in the private world. That just pervaded my existence in terms of image. And it was a very calculated thing. We needed to get the women back in the home if patriarchy was going to achieve its aims and goals, and they did a very good job.
I think the resistance comes when you try to push off onto me your lifestyle and what you want. And I think within the society in which we live, you can live in a traditional family or a not traditional family, whichever is your choice.
Equality in the home, equality in the job market, equality in political representation are vitally important and have to be supported. But feminism is not primarily about equality, because equality means we want an equal part of the system. And feminism is really saying the system as a whole is distorted. The system as a whole is one that leads to oppression, that leads to exploitation, that leads to hurt, concrete hurt of human beings. And so it's the system as a whole that we have to change.
Well, I was eating breakfast, getting ready to go to work, and
with the kids were there, and my wife was preparing breakfast, and she was whistling and singing, and I finished and went to the bedroom to brush my teeth, and I went into her purse because I needed lunch money, and there was some papers sticking out of there that weren't usual, and I looked at them, and she had drawn out a very sizable sum of money from a bank that we didn't deal with.
His wife and kids were gone when he returned home later that day, and shortly thereafter, Bill Carroll began a bitter custody battle for his daughters, Kristen and Lauren. And while it is becoming a bit more common for the father to be awarded custody, some 8,000 Shelby County households with children are headed by single males, Bill knew the odds would still be against him. Helping his lawyer prepare for the case, Bill found studies which showed girls raised by their fathers have better heterosexual relationships when they mature, tend to be more independent, more logical, and more motivated. He found backing in the American Psychological Association, which said it was wrong to award custody solely on the basis of the parent's sex.
In other words, that a man can bring up a child as well as a woman. It's strictly a matter of parenting, and that they stated that motherhood is, in quotes, that motherhood is a myth.
In the end, Bill's wife yielded to personal evidence gathered against her. And though being a single father of two cuts down on his social life, Bill says he doesn't mind at all.
You've got to really want your kids. But a lot of guys, if they tried it, they'd like it, because it's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I really became a real full person because of my kids.
My income covers basic needs, but as far as emergencies, and last month would be a good example. I had to have my engine in my car rebuilt, and that was $500 just in parts. And Stephen was sick, and I missed a day of work from that, and plus the doctor bill and prescription medicine. And I think last month was a terrible month, that's financially, anyways.
It is, of course, far more common for the kids to remain in the mother's custody, and for many women, assuming the role of single parent ends their membership in the middle class.
We ate an awful lot of rice and beans and potatoes. I knew that I could fall back on my parents, but who likes to have to ask? It was rough.
2 out of 3 adults who fall into the federal definition of poverty are women, and more than half the families defined as poor are maintained by single women. According to government figures, by the year 2000, the entire poverty population will be composed of women and their children. And many of these women are like Betty, women who suddenly find themselves confronted with a world they were never prepared for outside the traditional female role.
I had no experience. I had a background in music.
Feminists say the impoverishment of women may be the most crucial challenge facing society today.
That traditional notion is one that is limited, that has certain definitions of women attached to it, that has worked against women not only in their personal capacities, but has worked against women economically. And we have locked women into a poverty level in this country, except for a few, and I'm very privileged too. I'm very lucky. I do my, in terms of my work, but we've locked women in.
They haven't really had any disgust or negative thoughts.
My mother and parents accept it really well. I think they just accept that it's more or less of a modern thing nowadays. I don't really see any, it's something I don't even really think about anymore.
It's an economic way of living too, as far as combining incomes, combining rent.
I think marriage is becoming obsolete too.
Steve and Melody are part of a growing trend that has those concerned about the future of the American family feeling uneasy. Greater numbers of unmarried couples are living together. The latest census indicates well over 1 million. The increase is seen as a result of the pill and liberalized abortion laws, which means a greatly reduced chance of having a child out of wedlock, which is something Steve and Melody say they couldn't fit into their new wave lifestyle.
Because we're both too
chaotic life.
Yeah, we got too many things that we do and too many interests.
Too many other goals
yeah.
trying to achieve.
Yeah, and our lifestyles we don't live in any type regular, basic function.
Kid would be schizophrenic.
Yeah.
Severe.
We don't leave a normal life at all. I mean, we're never at home at a certain time or and have the responsibility of a kid, I just can't. I don't think I could take care of a kid right now.
I believe they would say it was okay. Go ahead and test it out, see if we thought if we would get married that would be all right.
James and Claire Bacon expressed mild shock that their son and daughter-in-law thought they'd have no objection to their living together. However, they do understand when the couple, who have been married 2 years, say they want to wait a while longer before having a child, another bothersome trend.
I'd like to spend some more time with just us before we do have children. I'd like to have a little bit more stable home and be prepared for it.
When my child is born, I want him to have everything that I didn't have, you know, pretty much that feeling.
For a long time, it just never seemed to fit into my schedule. Been sort of busy, and I guess until about 2 or 3 years ago, I didn't really see how I could really find the time to do justice to a marriage and a family. And perhaps since then, I thought I probably could. I could readjust my schedule, change my priorities. And since that time, it's not been that easy to find the right person who's willing to share me with a career.
Dr. Beverly Williams, in her mid-30s, is among those who represent a drop in the marriage rate, down some 22% nationally between 1970 and 1980. That means a further drop in an already declining birth rate, which doesn't bode well for the baby business, food, toys, diapers, and college, the military, or Social Security.
Exercise. 1, 2, 3, 1. There you go. But I'm going to count a little faster. Okay? I don't know. I'm just stay busy with my job now, and I got a lot of time off to travel, which is what I enjoy doing as much as anything, I guess. Put in a lot of hours over here with these kids, and, 12 hours a day with kids is enough for me, not 24. Plus, I see all my buddies that not that happy, the ones that, some of them that, we grew up with, and been married at least once, like you say, 2 or 3 times, some of them paying out a lot of money for this and that, and I can barely take care of myself. That's one reason, but I don't know. I'm not, maybe if the right one comes around, I'm not going to say I'm not going to do it, but down, 4, keep your back straight, down.
John Ewing is 38, and among those who statisticians say will likely never marry, if only because delaying limits one's options.
The Lord will probably manage to take care of me. I've been taking care of people for a long time, I don't worry about. I wouldn't like to think of having a child for that reason anyway. To have some assured caretaker.
I don't know, as long as I stay in decent condition, I can take care of myself for a long time. But I don't know. That's a good point there. I don't know who's going to take care of me when I get too old. Maybe some of these guys will. Maybe some of these guys will be pro ball players one day. Hit them up for a loan or something.
Sugar on the candy cane. That's right, it's been a long time since I had a man that did it real good. If you ain't scared, take it out. I'll do it like a real live nasty girl should. Tonight, living in a fantasy, a little nasty world. Tonight, don't you wanna come with me? Do you think I'm a nasty girl? Tonight, living in a fantasy.
Turn on the radio and TV. It's frightening some of what you hear and see. Where's the sense of responsibility? Where's the regard for the family? Say we got to give a better message in our song. Say we got to bring better shows into the home.
Outside influences can make the role of parent especially difficult these days. For singer-songwriter Earl Randall, the dilemma was doubled when he realized he was one of those outside influences.
For God's sake, we ought to clean it up.
I can recall this one song we wrote for Ann Peebles called I Didn't Take Your Man, You Gave Him to Me. And my daughter Tamika, I guess she was about 3 years old, so she was walking around and she used to play it all the time, play the record on the record player. And she'd walk around, she knew all the lyrics.
By most standards, Earl Randall was successful, working for Willie Mitchell's High Records and turning out such hits as Come to Papa, as performed by Bob Seger. But Earl considered himself a failure as a parent and a person when the message he was giving his daughters and other impressionable kids glorified such things as adultery. When it came time to renew his contract, he couldn't do it.
Some people have asked me that, well, why didn't you just stay with the company and do the type of material you wanted to do? But see, that wouldn't work. It might seem as if it would, but when you're talking about cleaning up something, and people are making their money by doing what they've been doing all the time, and what I was doing too, we were making money. People are not going to really listen.
After working at several low-paying jobs and watching his family suffer economically, Earl went back to what he knew best, only on his terms this time. He started his own label.
I had to make another statement. This is the message I want to put forth. Sometimes you have to do things yourself. I guess that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you have to step out. And it was really a hard road, and it is now.
I heard a line in a song today, y'all. Said do anything you wanna do, it's okay. But if we abandon our morals and rules, what do we expect for the kids to do?
We're fighting sin. We're standing up against sin, not people.
We don't want to impose our morals on them, but neither do we want them to impose their immorality on us.
I'm doing it for them. You know, that doesn't bother me, but I know them living in this neighborhood and growing up in this neighborhood, that's why I'm doing it.
They love to watch her strut and pay billions of dollars annually for that pleasure, whether it be topless dancers, prostitution, peep shows, movies, or magazines. They love to watch her strut. But one person's pleasure is another's poison, and a crusade is underway in Memphis in response to those who feel giving free rein to the libido can only lead to the dissolution of the family, as people seek sexual gratification wherever they can find it.
These things that are seen are finally acted out. Now there are those eggheads who will tell us that what you see doesn't affect you.
The thing that we have to bear in mind is that sex, the drive for sex, is within the individual, like hunger and thirst and the need for all of the other basic biological requirements of the human being.
Well, if that's true, you tell me why a person will spend nearly $500,000 for 1 minute's advertising at the Super Bowl if what you see doesn't affect you. They know what you see affects you.
To say then that sexual drive or desire comes from outside is comparable to saying that a person becomes hungry because he looks at pictures of fruit. Such is not the case. One becomes hungry because of a biological drive within him. By the same token, one has the sex drive because of the gonads, the sex glands.
Pornography is now into such forms of deviation, and because the other partner would not perform in this way, there has come a disaffection, a divorce, or a strong alienation.
Obviously, for one to do something that the other is violently opposed to would be tantamount to rape, really. It certainly is not a human relationship. But apart from that, whatever they can do to give each other some enjoyment, some relief of this drive is all to the good. In fact, I think that is one definition of love, isn't it? Love seeketh not itself to please, but for another gives its ease.
Pornography is the enemy of the home. And the enemy of the home is the enemy of society, and the enemy of society is the enemy of the nation.
In the 4 years I've been in the business, not once have I held a gun on any lady or gentleman and marched them in any of my places of business. It's a demand for this business.
We'd just have one drink. He would. And one drink led to 2 drinks. And eventually you got back to the 3 martini lunch and the martini before dinner and a nightcap. And then in the morning he'd get up and his hand was shaking and he couldn't sign papers at the office, so he'd have a drink to go to work. And it was a vicious cycle.
The vicious cycle included violence against Betty Brooks and her children. The National Council on Alcoholism estimates more than 10 million alcoholics in the U.S. For Betty and many others, when all else fails, the answer is divorce. But what do you do when your child is an alcoholic, a drug addict? The first thing you realize, according to Joe, is that society blames you, as he learned when juvenile authorities returned his runaway drug-addicted daughter.
Well, they reamed me out good, said I was an awful parent, and man, I must have been, I was terrible. I had to be. I really felt so bad. I felt like when I walked out of that place, I must have been, I came up to around Terry's knees, I think, or something like that. That's the way I felt.
And I'd finally found a place where I fit in, and they didn't want me to be there. It was like they didn't want me to be happy.
It played havoc with our marriage. It just, we were going separate ways, you know. It's hard to explain what guilt, how you feel. You know, you have already gone back to the cradle with everything you've done wrong with your kid. You don't remember anything you've done right. You remember everything you've done wrong.
In desperation, Joe and Mary sought outside help.
This was a psychiatrist or something like that. So we did everything they said. We set her up in an apartment. We got her a car. We did everything they told us to do. We did everything just right.
And I tried to not go back to the same crowd, but I couldn't do it. I wanted to shoot some drugs, so I went out and I started getting back into life, and I got arrested.
I knew no answers to how do you raise kids so you don't get this.
We got it. How could we answer such a question?
And I think like even asking that kind of question is what makes people nuts. Because we're always saying to ourselves, you know, what did I do that went wrong? And there's so much pressure on people to raise that perfect child.
Phyllis and David York founded a program called Tough Love after their 3 children became involved with drugs. Based on the concept that children can go wrong in spite of their parents' best efforts, it encourages parents to take a stand, to get tough with their kids.
And you have to have a supported neighborhood and supportive schools. And what we're really saying is you've got to change the culture we live in. We live in a culture that's not really very nice right now. And we're saying get a community, change the culture, have some compassion, not just for kids, but for parents too, who are struggling with the same kind of stuff.
The Tough Love method worked for Joe and Mary. They refused to get their daughter out of jail unless she agreed to treatment.
When you make them responsible, that's when you love them enough to actually help them.
Yeah.
All this, if we had gotten her a lawyer like she wanted and gotten her out of jail, we'd have probably still been in the same fix.
I think she'd be dead right now.
Yeah.
Sudden insane acts of violence, uneasy race relations, cancerous chemical pollution, job-threatening technology, dream-shattering unemployment, and the ever-present nuclear threat. We are concerned. The call for a nuclear freeze is more mainstream than the anti-war movement of the 60s.
These are all forms of stress, they're all forms of things that build up that could cause problems. It's not necessarily one thing that causes people to fall apart. It is the gradual accumulation of stressors, of problems that tend to set them off.
We may demonstrate, we may write letters to our congressmen and women, but for the most part, we handle it. And to those who feel the increasing divorce rate and the decreasing birth rate are more threatening than a host of political, social, and technological change, we say, look around. There is commitment to family. Take Frank McCormick and his wife, Karen Casey. They're working parents of the 80s, interested in self-fulfillment, but they are also committed to family. Frank and Karen have intentionally welded the family bond by having their children at home. Midwifery has become very popular among this generation of parents, opposed to the impersonal air of the hospital.
Immediately after birth, the baby is going to be taken into the nursery and placed there for a minimum of 6 hours for observation. No matter how the birth went, no matter how smoothly or how roughly, they're going to take the baby away at the very beginning. And I want very much to have the little baby with me immediately after birth. It's a very close time for all of us, it has been.
The first birth I didn't really like a lot. I was in and out of the room all the time. The second birth I was in the room helping and fanning my mom.
Frank acted as coach, encouraging his wife on as the midwife delivered the baby.
You get very close to your midwives. After the process, it's someone that is more than just a doctor that you're going to get a computerized invoice from and have to pay a bill. They're our friends.
Karen and Frank say they expect the closeness established at birth will remain as the children grow.
I believe so. I really do. Of course, we have to find that out as we go along, but I think so.
And while they may be fulfilling their own dreams first, like Larry and Carol Raspberry, they're still having babies, just later than past generations.
In our particular vocation, when it can happen for you, success-wise, it can happen very big and then average out all the lean years. And we devoted a certain amount of time to trying to attain that goal. After a point, we realized that maybe we better think about a family, whether we got there or not.
Carol is part of a recent trend among baby boom women who are giving birth after 30, and the Raspberries say their son Chance will likely benefit from that.
We had a lot of time to know each other, a lot of time to spend with each other, and our honeymoon never ended, so to speak. And I think that probably we have more countenance with our little one because we can give up time a little more willingly.
Because he was such a wanted child, we planned for him, and we made a lot of concessions in our lifestyle. We got sort of our reckless youth out of our system and made arrangements to have this child and stay home and devote the time and attention to him that we felt was necessary.
What we think is important is knowing what it's about to have a little one and wanting them, because you owe them a lot.
As for divorce, statistics show most will remarry, and the second marriage is likely to last. Betty Brooks, who has 3 children, will soon wed. Her husband-to-be is also divorced with a child of his own. Betty and Bill will assume the roles of step-parents in a blended family. It's a tricky adjustment. Children have problems accepting step-parents. But as Betty says, there were periods when she wasn't doing that great with her natural kids.
But Bill came into my life, and I frequently say that God sent Bill to me at a wonderful time, because my 2 older ones were mid-teens. They were just beginning to test their wings, and they were testing me at the same time. And Bill explained to me that I didn't have to be stern and strict to work things out, and he opened a new door, explained new avenues to me that have just been wonderful.
And for those who feel the feminist movement is anti-family, Marcia Wells can tell them it's just not so. She will soon remarry, and since her first husband did not want children, the feminist movement can claim credit for altering Marcia's circumstance, which now makes it practical for her to have a child, which she very much wants.
Particularly with my brother, since his child was born about 1.5 years ago. He's just, so crazy about him, and it's been such a fulfilling thing for him that I think about going through life without having that profound human experience, and I don't want it.
And for those concerned the traditional concepts of marriage and family are fading, Sherry and Michael Buford should give them comfort. Starting a family was their #1 priority. Sherry is pregnant.
That's the best news of all.
We're real excited because ever since I was young, I wanted 2 things: a big wedding, a nice husband, a caring husband, and some children. And if this one goes through, hopefully it won't be our last. But we're real excited about that.
I'm right.